Welcome to the Killer Innovation Show, the longest continuously produced podcast in history. Each week, Phil McKinney brings you the insights and strategies to amplify your creativity and innovation skills. Here's your host, Phil McKinney.
Welcome. We are actually back here in the main studio here in Colorado. We've been on the road for the last, 7 or 8 weeks. We will be here for a while, and then we're going to actually hit the road again and capture more interesting stories of innovators doing interesting things wherever they are innovating at. So today's show is a little different. We are actually going to cover a topic that in our 16 plus years, we have never covered before. At 16 years of doing the show, odds are we kind of cycle back around and maybe update things. This is a topic that we have never covered before. So what is today's topic? Today's topic is around the role and the importance of infrastructure, like real estate has on innovators. Now you're going to think, what is this? Real estate, it's about office, having, nice cubes or nice offices or whatever for your teams or your staff. And even in today's world, more startups are just working from people's houses. Do you really need real estate? Today's topic, I think you will find extremely interesting. It's not what you think it is. So you definitely want to buckle in and listen to the whole show all the way to the end. Today's guest is Dr. Whitney Snider. Now, Whitney, she has an MD, she's a medical doctor, and she's an MBA. So she has her medical degree from Tufts University School of Medicine, and she has her MBA from Harvard. Okay, so that kind of puts you, knows the category of intelligence we're talking about here. She's very impressive, very smart, and comes in and we talked about the company that she works for, which is a company called Alexandria. Now, you may not know them. I didn't know them. I got pitched by a PR firm to have her come on the show. I read the briefing, was very impressed, and agreed to have her come on the show. Alexandria is a real estate company. They owned major real estate campuses all over the place. But they're a little bit different. They create what they refer to as collaborative campuses. Collaborative campuses, they bring together companies around a certain industry or a certain industry segment. Alexandria focuses typically on ag tech, biosciences, and pharmaceuticals. Now, in addition to the real estate, they also have a corporate venture capital. They make investments. They have they've invested about $1 billion. They've been around for a long time, and they invest in companies typically pre-A round, but they also do growth capital in one of these areas. In some cases, maybe even outside this area, but a lot of it is in this ag tech, bio, pharma kind of space. And then if that wasn't enough, they also do incubators and accelerators. And we cover all of this in the interview today. What I will give you is one teaser that we talked about, and that is the Alexandria corporate VCs and them making an investment in some of the companies who are in the front line of the COVID vaccine. So you're going to want to make sure you listen and understand a little bit of that context. And particularly in this case, their investments being far ahead of of COVID. It wasn't a recent investment. They made this investment some time ago, but that investment and other investors positioned some of these startup companies to be in the position to play a critical, important role in the vaccine for COVID-19. In today's topics, we cover a whole wide range of areas: VC risk capital and how important that is, talent, how do you find good people, and location, and that you got to work those two together. You just can't pick a location and drop one of these collaborative campuses in the middle of nowhere where nobody currently lives, nobody wants to live. Collaboration, how do you bring organizations together and how do you collaborate? And the role of human ingenuity, creativity to innovate. and how this all plays together. So without any further delay, let's jump into today's show. But before we do that, what I would ask a favor is like and share, let other people know about today's show, people who you think might benefit from hearing about today's show. You want to do that. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and let's jump into today's interview with Whitney Snider of Alexandria. So, Whitney, tell me a little bit about yourself. Give me a little bit of your background and your experiences, and also give us a little bit of an introduction to Alexandria.
Great. Well, Phil, first and foremost, thanks so much for having me here today. It's really a pleasure, and I look forward to kind of sharing the Alexandria story. So quickly about me. So at Alexandria Real Estate Equities, I help support our venture activity in the New York City life science cluster. And I also run our life science accelerator called LaunchLabs. Formerly in terms of background, I have an MD from Tufts and did an MBA at Harvard, and have had various roles at the intersection of life science and business, including Bain and Celgene and several others. But on to Alexandria. So Alexandria Real Estate Equities is the pioneering and longest tenured owner, operator, and also developer that's uniquely focused on collaborative campuses for life science companies, for technology companies, and ag tech companies. And these companies in our clusters are usually in AAA innovation locations. And I'll kind of elaborate on that in this conversation. And so, as you know, and a lot of your listeners know, part of what sparks creativity for innovators is being immersed in an inspiring environment. And so, we've focused on building and growing these collaborative ecosystems. And our portfolio spans around 50 million square feet, and it's concentrated in some of the most innovative cities in North America, such as Greater Boston, San Francisco, Seattle, New York, San Diego, and Research Triangle Park, to name a few. And our properties and clusters really provide, our innovative tenants with dynamic and collaborative environments that enhance their ability to successfully recruit and retain world-class talent, inspire productivity, efficiency, creativity, and success. We also have a venture capital arm, and I think we'll probably talk about it a bit more extensively later in our conversation, but it's been recognized by Silicon Valley Bank as the most active corporate biopharma investor in new deal volume for 4 years in a row. And our goal is really to provide strategic capital to some of the most promising and successful and transformative life science, ag tech, and tech companies. But taking a step back, Alexandria wasn't always, so big. Like, it's hard to believe that it really started as a garage startup with a vision to create a new kind of real estate company, and one that's focused uniquely on the life science industry. And over the past 27 years, the company has had incredible growth and, has really established itself as the leader in owning, operating, and developing these collaborative campuses. And personally, a lot of this, I think, a lot of our success and differentiation, of course, is the unique vision and, the fact that our tenants and our investments are truly changing human health. But at the end of the day, I think we have really, really unique and kind of world-class teams, and that is the fiber and DNA of Alexandria for sure.
Well, it's interesting because I'm guessing a bunch of the listeners now are sitting here going, hold on, you brought a real estate company onto this show. How does a real estate company get involved in, what's the role of real estate around innovation? And you talked a little bit about it. Alexandria's got a venture arm, and then you've also got an incubator / startup kind of an environment. But even just on the real estate side, let's take the venture and the startup and set that aside. On the real estate side, though, I want to drill in a little bit about this collaborative campuses. There's campuses, and there's, anchor tenants when people are putting in, meaningful facilities. But in your case, it's different, though, because when you say collaborative campuses, it may not be just one company, but it's around a collection that allows for a level of collaboration. Can you elaborate on that a little bit more?
Yeah, definitely, Phil. And I feel like this is like the crux of, what makes Alexandria so special. And when you think about, complex and advanced sectors like the life sciences, like tech, there are a number of factors that foster this spirit of innovation and collaboration. And so I'll share a framework from a renowned HBS professor, Michael Porter, to kind of set the conversation, and I can kind of put it into practice. But on how to cultivate a strong cluster and enable kind of world-class innovation in these advanced areas. And so they're kind of four ingredients we think about and look for and try to cultivate if they're missing to really help spur innovation in the areas in which we plant seeds. And so the four dimensions are location, innovation, talent, and capital. And so, kind of to take one by one, using the life sciences as an example. So, starting with location. So, we try to think about, what a specific place offers in terms of urban amenities, resources. Fresh talent wants to be where the action is. And so, it's important to choose a location for a cluster that has ample public transportation or quality housing, cultural institutions, entertainment, and it varies by industry, and it's not a prescribed thing. It really has to do with the industry you're in and kind of the focus of the company you're starting. So location, absolutely critical. And that takes me kind of the second factor. And that's like the area's innovation or innovative quality. And so we're always evaluating what corporate or academic and research institutions are present within a particular ecosystem and how they're advancing or not advancing their fields. And when there's a concentration of like-minded players in a given environment, there's always greater opportunities for partnership and healthy competition, or maybe an opportunity present that no one else has kind of seen. And so this factor leads really nicely into the third. And that centers on talents. And in urban locations with renowned institutions and companies, those are kind of the areas that attract and retain really talented workers. And so, a strong pipeline of specialized talent to build your company, build your team is really paramount. And this is one I can't underscore enough, and is sometimes the trickiest piece of this four-piece puzzle. And then finally, in terms of capital, a robust venture landscape is really needed to fuel and fund innovation at all stages of research, development, commercialization. So, to truly spark this kind of collaboration and summary between innovators, and using this life science example, you just have to unite, the innovation and cutting edge science with leading scientific talent, along with the right strategic investment capital and kind of best in class resources, institutions. And that kind of culmination is really what kind of brings this all to life. So,
Yeah, you and I were talking before we started the show about
mhm.
these elements of location, innovation, talent, and capital. And this reinforces, as innovators, the fact is it's not just about your idea or what you've invented.
Mhm.
You need all of these other elements. You got to have talent to support it. You got to have access to capital. You've got to have, and location does play. Now, albeit my view on the location is a little different because I think there's a little bit of a bias that innovation only happens in these hotspot areas. But yours is a little different because you're actually bringing people together. Because, for instance, I would never think, and I'm not a pharma person, so I don't come from a pharma background, but I would never think of New York as being a big pharma area, right? Like versus, having been the CTO at HP, Silicon Valley, that's kind of the natural place to go. But is this what Alexandria does? Is it kind of almost pulls creates almost the vortex that kind of draws people in to like establish this in New York? Like I said, I in my mind, I would just never think of New York as a pharma place.
Yeah, it's such a good point. And, I think, our executive chairman and founder, Joel Marcus, I think was really bullish on New York and, saw it as really a place that could have tremendous life science growth well before others did. I mean, there really wasn't, a campus in New York to promote life science innovation and kind of bring together top tier biotech and pharma companies. And so I think looking at this framework, the sort of innovation was here through great academic institutions. There's so many, and New York is so seeded with incredible talent and incredible, research ongoing. And then capital's here for sure. New York being obviously kind of the finance capital here in the U.S. And so it was really about kind of providing more structure to the location and really helping then to pull in the right talents. Because talent will kind of come where there are opportunities. And so, we've really, I think, put New York more on the map, certainly in the biotech and life sciences area. But to your point, it really was sort of about identifying a place with a lot of these incredible components and then moving towards it when no one else really had.
Right. And again, it's interesting. What is in it? I mean, are your campuses all primarily like what called the big life science guys? Is it a good mix between large, medium, and small? What's the draw? I mean, obviously the talent piece, the venture piece. But do you also target these industries that are looking for what I would call, what the term I use is co-innovation, where the lift requires that more than one company come together? Is that part of what really draws people to one of these collaboration campuses that you create?
Certainly. No, it's a great point. And so, on our campuses, we will have some of the world's biggest pharma companies, and we will also have some of, the region's greatest upstarts that, are really just coming out of the gate, translating out of an academic institution with, a fundraise in hand and kind of a bold vision. And so I think for these companies, it's so synergistic to bring together both the established and the new. I think they rejuvenate each other,
Right.
and I think certainly there is a commingling of talent. There's a commingling of energy, and I think it's really nice. We see a lot of engagement between the different companies, and a lot of what we're able to do through our buildings is allow a company that's just coming out of the gate start with a smaller footprint. And as their team, as their idea, as their research and development grows, they're able to grow within, a physical building or a physical campus. And so that's kind of one way we've allowed innovation to kind of continue on in an interesting way. So it's a good question.
Yeah, no, this kind of leads into a little bit of the venture capital side. So in those
Mhm.
cases where you've got those upstarts coming on to the campus, does that then become the target then for the venture side of Alexandria? Is that those are the kinds of companies you're investing in, or those that are part of these campus environments, or is it kind of open to anything?
It's a really good point. So for us, we really think about supporting emerging innovation in many different ways. We often invest in really great ideas and innovators and companies that aren't necessarily part of our real estate portfolio. And some companies we get to know very well through our real estate portfolio, and then have the opportunity to help nurture and invest in. And I think something we think deeply about are what are the best resources to support innovators and, up and coming companies. And while the needs are multifaceted, there are two elements that we've really honed in on, and that's sort of this funding and networking element, and then also this idea of high quality space. And so, funding is often lacking for many companies. It's always critical, and it's extremely difficult to successfully spin out an idea without this idea of a support network and mentors. And so to kind of delve a bit more into our venture investments arm, Alexandria Venture Investments, it was established in 96. And the point was really to boost investment in early stage life science innovation. And we complement it with kind of a unique seed capital platform as well. And we've helped build, the successful fund by leveraging our experience and an in-depth understanding of the life sciences, technology space, ag tech industries, and by leveraging our long-term relationships with leading investors, and kind of a scientific advisory network. And so this puts us in a position to fund seed, early, and growth stage companies across the board, and across kind of the US and beyond, where we really see, innovation growing at its best. And, kind of the second piece to this puzzle that I mentioned, the need for high quality space going hand in hand. Um, Early stage innovative companies, especially in the life science and ag tech spaces, really need kind of the right growth platform. They can't survive solely in a virtual world. And it can be both difficult and expensive to secure space for your team and for your research and development when you're a seed stage company and you're looking to grow quickly. You're still raising, requisite funds. And so to help the most promising innovators gain access to world-class equipment, lab and office space, we established this platform called Alexandria LaunchLabs, which I feel very fortunate to help lead here in New York City. And this is a platform for life science and ag tech companies, that are on a really accelerated trajectory, but still at a nascent stage. And these are the companies that could one day kind of grow up to fill, bigger floor prints of our sort of campuses. And what we try to do is provide affordable rates. We try to expand their network by opening up our own, tapping into our tenant base and all our industry connections. We provide capital as companies can apply for funding. And then we also provide a lot of hands-on mentorship. And, I think both go hand in hand, the capital and the Launch Labs platform to help really cultivate innovation, and support platforms that ultimately can impact the future of human health.
So, question: how big is the venture capital side of Alexandria?
Yeah, so it's a strategic, corporate VC arm.
Right.
It's about 1.3 billion managed, and it goes all the way back to '96. So our executive chairman and founder Joel Marcus, when he kind of had the idea and created the venture side, and he still runs our venture team to date. Really was right there in some of the world's most innovative companies. A great example is kind of one of the leading vaccine makers, Moderna, has been a company that we sort of saw early on, really excited about the mRNA technology, way back when, I think it was 2012 or so. And, we both invested and helped them build out, some of their first real estate footprint and now, partner with them on their manufacturing. So I think that's a really good case study of identifying really unbelievable companies and helping them grow. And I mean, it's incredible to see what Moderna is today, and there's so many other examples of that.
Yeah, and again, when you think about corporate VCs, right? Typically, corporate VCs are really aligned around the core business. You're a little
Hmm.
bit different because your core business
Yeah.
really is real estate, but you're
Yeah.
really it's a corporate strategic investment in I don't know what you want to call it, industry segment areas that are also aligned. You're not the typical corporate VC. When I think about a corporate strategic VC, you're a whole different duck compared to what I see as other corporate
Completely.
VCs out there.
Yeah. Yeah. No, it's such a good point. And I think, it's an interesting example of how Alexandria has really remained sort of nimble and flexible in practice and sort of resolute in our vision. Um, our mission is to really create and grow clusters that ignite and accelerate the world's leading innovators in their pursuits, to advance human health, improving nutrition and kind of curing diseases. And this really runs through our DNA. And so, we've been flexible and really have capitalized and seen opportunities, but they're still very in line with, I think, our ultimate mission and our vision, to really kind of promote human health. And so we really follow researcher, entrepreneur, and author Jim Collins. And, he studies and advises on leadership. And I think this example of the venture arm is a really good example of sort of like our values versus practices.
Right.
And, our values remain resolute, but we always are reevaluating our practices and what we're doing or what we should stop doing or where there's an opportunity. And I think a lot of the channels we've gotten into beyond real estate. We also have a thought leadership platform, and we have a really strong corporate responsibility effort too. A lot of that comes down to us sort of saying, okay, what practices need to evolve to really be core to, the heart of this company.
Let's talk a little bit about the Launch Lab, because you run that for
Mhm.
Alexandria in New York. Give us a little bit of a
Exactly.
context of how that operates, and then the kind of
Totally.
companies that you find that can take advantage of this. Because we've seen there's lots of incubators, accelerators out.
Hmm.
Some have made
Hmm.
it, some don't. Some have a little bit
Yeah.
higher success rate than others. Talk a little bit about why the Alexandria Launch Lab is different, and give us a little bit of a look under the hood there.
Definitely, definitely. So we have LaunchLabs sites on many of our major campuses across the US. And I think what makes LaunchLabs incredibly special is we really look for kind of the up and coming companies in our respective regions and say, okay, how do we identify which companies could really use the infrastructure, the lab infrastructure, as well as sort of the mentoring infrastructure to be kind of one of the brightest stars eventually kind of in our respective regions. And so in New York, for example, we have just under 20 companies. And we look for a breadth of backgrounds. Some companies come in with seed financing, others have more established Series A rounds. But what we try to do is work with those teams, kind of identify their specific needs and provide both introductions on sort of the investment or networking side, and then also to pinpoint resources that may help on the operational side. And so kind of the sweet spot of time is around 2 years within the Launch Labs platform. It kind of depends regionally, but the goal is really to help these companies get to a major inflection point in their development, to kind of kick into the next gear, to build the team, to raise the next round of
Mhm.
financing, and kind of turbocharge the company, but allow them to be really lean at the beginning so that they can channel their focus and resources kind of in the highest net activities. So it's been really incredible to watch many of our companies grow, and kind of grow out of Launch Labs. But yeah,
So it's a little
I
bit
think it's a really unique.
you are a little different because a lot of the incubators, they have kind of a start date. All the companies come together, they kind of run them through a program, and then they get launched out the other end. Versus it's more about each of the companies in Launch Lab is unique. Its timing is different, what it needs is different, the stage of maturity is different, how it
Mhm.
leverages your network is different. So it's very much if I'm getting this right, it's much more of a tailored support
Mhm.
rather than a packaged kind of offering of a maybe more traditional incubator accelerator.
Definitely. And I think that's a great point. I definitely agree. And that's how we really wanted to structure it, just given the unique needs of each company. But I think beyond that, it's such a good point, Phil, because it kind of identifies that if you're looking for an accelerator or incubator platform, really understanding how customized, hands-on, the kind of benefits you'll get from the network just beyond kind of the infrastructure and space is really critical. And we pride ourselves on moving the model forward and, being kind of the first and premier, especially in New York City, where we saw this like great need to bridge the gap between incredible academic science and then, full-fledged biotech companies. So, and it was so successful here. This was our first site, 2017, that we've grown across the country to kind of replicate that success. But what I think is another interesting factor is that we've really tailored the platform to each region. Our core kind of values and principles are the same across the board, but each region is so different
Right.
in terms of like the needs and the networking. Like greater Boston area is kind of the mecca of biotech. New York, in some respects, we are more of connectors, just given that's a little bit harder sometimes in this ecosystem. So
Right.
it's a good blend.
Let's talk a little bit about, because in the case of all industries to be aligned with, right? Biotech, pharma, ag tech, and we're hopefully coming up to being on the tail end of our of the COVID experience. But
Mhm.
in the case of you, one being Alexandria being a real estate company, two providing significant infrastructure support for the industry,
Mhm.
and at a time when so much emphasis was put on the development of pharma and biotech technologies to try to address the pandemic. How
Mhm.
do you? I mean, as a CEO, just dealing with the fact that we had to shut our offices down and having employees work remote, that was enough for me as a CEO to deal with. I couldn't imagine what what you were facing, because you had to have your facilities open in order to let the scientists invent the technologies that we need as on a global basis to get past something like COVID-19. How did you guys react? What happened?
Yeah, it's a great question, and certainly a lot of lessons in innovative agility here. First and foremost, it's been such a challenging year to say the least. We're really proud that over 100 of our tenants and investments are currently working on COVID-19 solutions, and that spans from diagnostic testing to vaccines to treatments. And we're really in awe of their heroic efforts, and because of their work, our offices and labs have been considered essential spaces since day one of the pandemic. And so our Alexandria teams, and I can't underscore more just the incredible depth of our Alexandria team, have been operating our buildings 24/7, 365 since the pandemic started. And because Alexandria is so core to the heart of the life science industry, I mentioned Moderna as a tenant, Pfizer as well, the leading vaccines. We really had to kind of kick into gear some specific initiatives to adapt our buildings for our tenants. And so, to touch first on the lab spaces, the most critical spaces, in which a lot of these solutions were developed. They already in our buildings have a lot of the features that you need for a safe workplace. Ample distancing, high quality air filtration. But to further protect our tenants and to provide some reassurance, because the things unseen you don't necessarily know. And there were just so many unknowns at the time that right at the outset, we launched an initiative called ARE Safe. And so that was to kind of enhance preventative measures in our building. And it included, circulation routes, improved cleaning and disinfection, obtaining PPE for all our tenants and our workers, because it was so hard to secure that, and a lot more. And another thing that we recognized very early on was that diagnostic testing was the way to keep our campuses and our tenants feeling safe and kind of keeping up productivity, but understanding when, someone on a team had, the virus and kind of need to take a step back. And so to reduce the spread of COVID-19 on our campuses, we put in place testing efforts in New York, South San Francisco, and Cambridge to help our tenants, screen for asymptomatic cases. And I guess the last thing I wanted to touch on, we really tried to leverage our network and team up with kind of the leading experts in biopharma, clinical research, psychiatry, which is, such a big issue now too, to form a dedicated advisory board. And so like it's our COVID-19 advisory board, and this board reviews and validates and kind of strengthens our health and safety measures to provide real-time insights on the pandemic, is because as we know, it kind of continues to evolve in real time.
Yeah, the only thing that I've learned, as a CEO going through this pandemic is that there's no playbook.
Right,
don't,
right.
don't think
You just
there's
have to have, yeah, it's just about great teams and great
Right.
processes. And I think that's what it's come down to for us, because we were able to, our teams kicked into gear, really rose to the challenge, and we were able to kind of iterate on these processes, and that flexibility and kind of depth of the bench is what really I think has helped us operate and not miss a single day, a single beat for our tenants.
Yeah, at the beginning, you used the term about, the agility, right? You had to have innovative agility. So
Mhm.
it isn't just about you got to have good processes, but it's also about knowing at the right time when you need to change the process,
Mhm.
right?
Mhm.
And um, so this advisory board, I'm a little interested in this advisory board. So
Yeah.
is the advisory board then actually helping you with policies and procedures that then get rolled out across Alexandria as far as all the facilities, et cetera? Man, that in the early days, there was a lot of iteration because nobody knew what the policies and procedures should be.
Right. No, it's such a good point. And so at the outset, we kind of had an internal working group that really drew from the company's expertise, and had some of our executive team, legal team, HR team, other teams really seasoned in operations. And so we created this group that met daily, and put this group in place and sort of tried to go down and identify the issues. And this was like a really core lesson. I was part of this team, just in like how you deal with crisis management, and whether it's a pandemic, whether it's some other issue that you come across as you're building your company, or think about building a company. I think, having the right advisory board internally and externally, and then, making sure those people have the space and time to think through all channels, such that, to your point, it's sort of like, we know this is going to change tomorrow, so how do we make it thorough but flexible
Right.
today? And how do we cross check with the right resources but rely on our knowledge and our expertise to complement that? So, I'm it's unbelievable to see where we've come in the past year. And I'm just really, again, can't say how proud I am of so many of our tenants, innovating so many of these solutions. And it's nice to play a very, very small role in that, personally. But for our Alexandria team, it's like huge kudos to kind of keep all these buildings running. It's really heroic.
Yeah, no, it is, definitely impressive. Uh, I do have to make the comment though that not every company has a medical doctor such as yourself on staff. To, with regards to things when you're in the middle of a pandemic, but the fact that though your real estate, your facilities, the labs you build and that are operated by the leading pharma companies absolutely was, critical. And it's impressive that from day one, your ability to operate 7 by 24, 365 is quite impressive. It's quite impressive. Um, so with regards to Alexandria and the venture arm and your launch labs, what's next? What's on the horizon? I mean, yes, we're still in the middle of the pandemic. We could all talk about we could, I've talked a
Yeah.
lot about the pandemic. But I also like to kind of look out a little bit, like so what do you think what do you guys do next? How do you encore what you guys have already been doing for such a long length of time?
Yeah, it's a great question. And I don't mean to laugh at the pandemic comment.
Right.
It's like, it feels like Groundhog Day, but, at the same
Yeah,
time, per our conversation, we're always thinking about what's next. And
right.
so it makes me pause for a second there. But, to kind of set the tone for how we think about what's next, we kind of look at where we are. And right now, there are 10,000 diseases known to humankind, and only around 10% are currently addressable with some sort of treatment. And, of this 10%, there are really very few cures. And so we see it as we're on the edge of a biology revolution. And, we are excited to contribute to it. And so some of the things that this time has revealed is that modern medicine is growing increasingly complex, and advancements are occurring at really unprecedented speeds. And we see this not only in life sciences, tech, ag tech, but so many other industries. And so, for us specifically in sciences, thinking about the future of complex medicines and how we can help in that infrastructure. And complex medicines are just like mRNA treatments, cell biology, et cetera, cell therapies, and other novel platforms. And these really hold the key to not only developing vaccines and treatments for what we're going through now, but also for the world's most pressing health issues, existing illnesses, future illnesses. And so, kind of as the world looks to the power of science and the life science industry and where we sort of play, this past year, I think, has underscored that, our business and our passion and purpose really are contributing to meet the unique needs of this industry. And, as we look to the future, we are already planning on how we can support that and sort of these areas that I've highlighted. So,
Well, I think
good.
also one, I think, and you think about the untapped possibilities of where pharma biosciences can go, ag tech can go, and to have have a global impact is, it we are on the verge of that revolution. And I think what we've seen in the pandemic is the power of human ingenuity when
Mhm.
faced with a really big problem. Right? If you think
Yeah.
back to the polio vaccine, or you think back to the invention of
Mhm.
insulin, you think back to these major breakthroughs in bioscience, it is the power of focus and human ingenuity to go tackle some of the big, and I'm just in awe. Everybody used to say it was going to be
Yeah.
3 years before a vaccine was available and all these
Mhm.
kinds of things. And what the industry was able to do on a very compressed schedule under a high level of scrutiny,
Mhm.
everybody watching, waiting for them to bring something out and to do it with vaccines that have, was it 97, 98% effectiveness rate on that kind of a short time frame. I think it gives everybody hope of whatever problem may come up that we think is a big problem. Human ingenuity, when we're faced with really big problems, don't
Mhm.
underestimate the power of human creativity, human ingenuity, the ability to innovate solutions. And I think what you did and what Alexandria has done with supporting that industry is impressive. Is quite impressive.
Thanks so much, Phil. And I think, the one last thing too to add to that, it's human ingenuity, and I think the insight to collaborate too. Like sometimes in these industries, with really cutting edge therapies, the sort of instinct is really to kind of protect one's ground. But I think what the pandemic showed is, the intersection of public private partnerships, the collaboration
Yep.
between some of the world's leading biopharma companies never would have happened at the speed or even at the outset. And so it gives me a lot of pause for thought and thinking about the future. And if we really want to push forward innovation in our own endeavors and our own companies in any industry, how do we kind of leverage that collaboration to do so more quickly, with greater success? So
Yep.
kind of a good lesson there
Yep.
too.
Excellent. So, Whitney, if people want to follow what Alexandria is doing, the venture arm, the incubator, where's the best place if people want to learn? Because I'm going to guess that a lot of listeners have never heard about Alexandria until today's show. So this is going to be a real eye opener for them, which part of why we do the show. But if people want to learn more beyond what we've covered today, or just to kind of keep track of what you are up to and that, where's the best place for them to stay in touch?
That's great. Thanks so much, Phil. So www.are.com. That's where you can find us. That's where a lot of our news and updates come. LinkedIn for sure. We have a LinkedIn page dedicated to LaunchLabs to help promote our entrepreneurs and highlight some of our venture activity. And so, now that you've heard of our name, I think you'll see us more and more frequently. So look forward to engaging with anyone. I'm also available on LinkedIn and always welcome new conversations. So thanks so much for having me, Phil.
Great. And Whitney, thanks a lot. We'll have all those links over on Killer Innovations just to make it easier. So if you're driving in your car, please do not try to write down the links to remember it when you get to wherever you're going. We will have all the links. Just hop over to killerinnovations.com and you can just click on the link and learn more about Whitney and Alexandria and all the work they do. And Whitney, thanks a lot for taking the time for joining us here on the show today.
Thank you, Phil.
Thank
Thanks
you.
everyone for listening.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to be with us here today. I really do appreciate the time you spend each week out of your schedule, slotting us in so that you can keep up with what the latest is on innovation, creativity, human ingenuity. And I hope you found today's show useful. Not just interesting, but actually useful. I think Whitney's point about collaboration, I can't underemphasize how important that is. And I've covered it in previous shows, so you can go find some of the past shows. In that context, we probably referred to it as co-innovation, some of the co-innovation work. But the conversation today with Whitney Snider probably just emphasized how important that is, and it may be a topic that I'll do in a future show. If you have an idea for a future show, let me know. Just drop me an email, phil@killerinnovations.com, phil@killerinnovations.com. We'll add it to the growing list of show topics that we will be coming. Can I ask a favor? Can you help me pay it forward? I started this show, we're now in season 17, so more than 16 years ago, I started this little project of the podcast as a way to kind of pay it back to my mentor, Bob Davis. Years after he invested in my career through his mentoring, I asked him, how do I pay him back? He laughed. He goes, you can't pay me back. You need to pay it forward. You need to share your knowledge, share your experiences with others. And that's what started the podcast. So can you help me pay it forward? You can do that by telling others, helping me spread the word, helping others find out about the show. That I would find extremely helpful, and I would greatly appreciate it. And while you're at it, can you post a rating, post a comment wherever you are getting today's show from, whatever platform that is. If you can comment below, if you can like it, you can share it. That also I would find to be very helpful and would greatly appreciate it. Thanks a lot again out of your busy schedule. Have a great week. Get out there, take your ideas, and go change the world. And we'll talk to you next week. Bye-bye.
Podcasting nonstop since 2005, this has been the Killer Innovation Show on the Innovators Network.